That bull is the conflict. And that rider is anything in my life, whether it's my kids, my business, anything else. And if I really engage with it, that's how I'm successful. I mean, I'll talk about a few of the steps that were kind of my mantra,
Yeah.
if that works in your event. Just because, I mean, there's some great examples that I like to do when I get to work with people too, of like, get everyone in a room and spread them out, get 20 people. And so you have 10 pairs, and try to have them communicate with each other across the room. It doesn't work. The same as with a bull. I can stand and jump up and down and wave my arms from 20 feet away. He can engage if he wants, but I have zero influence on him. Whereas if I get a little braver and you kind of get close, it actually becomes, that's the danger zone. When I'm 8-10 feet away from a bull, no matter what I do, he can outmaneuver me. He can cut me off and beat me. But if I get close, real close, now the movement, I have a small movement, he has to swing his whole body around. And just like, and to have a conversation with someone, if you're in and you're truly in the conversation, and it's not to outmaneuver someone when you're having that conversation, but it slows things down. And so my steps really in the arena were breathe first, because I'm like the breath holder, where I think I'm ready, and you're like, your body doesn't do well to that. You're not ready to respond both physically and mentally. So I just take a few breaths, and then my rules were just commit, get close, slow down. And the last one isn't it every time, but when you get knocked down, get up. Whatever it takes, get up. Because if you don't get up, you don't get to keep in it. Like, that's the end of it. So those steps really became how I dealt with these bulls. And it's how I deal with things in life. And the beauty as a bullfighter versus a bull rider, to me, was a bull rider gets on one bull. That's a lot of adrenaline. That's a lot of cortisol, all these things. Like, your body just goes. And people would say, wow, you guys are adrenaline junkies. And I'm like, I couldn't be. I had a 2-hour event, maybe. There might be 50 bulls. It might be 10. But I see every single bull in the event. And so I can't, it has to be more of a real settled, a real calm. So each bull is a whole new event. So finding presence, that whatever just happened, good, bad, indifferent. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But right now, I'm just here and I'm ready. And in that sense of being present, I think, one, it gives us an advantage to all of life. There's no point in living in either of those other two directions, because you don't get to live in them if you're not in this one right now.
Oh, Raymond, it's so symbolic for so many things. Like, the bull represents, you talked about conflict, it represents life, it represents all of the gray areas, the dark areas in our life. But the thing that it strikes me so much about when I'm listening to you tell this story, number one, like, my butt cheeks are clenching as you're talking about, like, walking towards an 1,800-pound animal. And by the way, I grew up on a farm with, like, horses and draft horses, and, like, mad respect, and those are relatively tame animals and have been around like cattle. But to be in one that has complete agency to do whatever it wants in there is mad respect for you of that grit factor. But what I'm so struck with is that, you named it, you said that's the conflict, and to lean into it. But I'm struck with this idea that you're creating this love language, this love connection, this empathy, this grace with this animal that most people in the stands might go, that's the villain. The bull rider is the hero. The bull is actually the anti-hero, right? The villain. And yet, as I'm listening to, they're actually not the villain. they're actually just this beautiful misunderstood ball of like whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm really struck with the fact of your not being mad at that bull for taking off half the back of your head and right, you know what I mean? Like it, and yeah, instead you're smiling when the bull's burying you into the ground because you realize that like, hey, it's not the bull's fault. And the fact is that I didn't fully commit. I didn't actually breathe. I didn't slow down. I actually didn't commit enough to get close enough. I'm just curious, where did that all come from? I mean, at a certain point, I mean, is this all bull dancers, bullfighters? Like, I mean, or this seems like a very like you had this moment.
I don't know. Thank you for that. I think part of it was starting late. Like I mentioned, so 33, I went to the first bull school. 34 actually really was at the point where I'm in. Like I'm so in. Like all I'm thinking is bulls nonstop. And so I think by going in at 33, most bullfighters, not entirely, but 18 to 30 is a pretty big window. So at 30, like most guys are stepping out. And at that point, they've been good for a while. So they're not getting the newbie butt whipping that I started getting at 33, 34. And I mean, I played high school sports, I did those things, but like I wasn't ever a star athlete. Um, so I had to use my brain so much more. But I think there's different mentalities, but I think for success, for people that are stepping into this, that are doing it, like there's definitely a respect for these bulls. Like one or two, if the bull riders don't choose to get on, I don't get to get in front of bulls. I don't spend like, and I mean, I know some wonderful, like a lot of guys that are bull riders that are really great guys, but like I just didn't spend tons of time around bull riders. I know them, and we're good friends. So that was part, and then the other is like, if these bulls didn't want to buck, they don't buck. And so if they weren't the athletes that they are, I again wouldn't get to do what I do. So I think, I don't know, and maybe everyone kind of feels it, but they're busy doing other things, so maybe they don't verbalize it the sense that I do. But I do believe like the respect for the animals there, the people that are raising them and care for them, that's so next level. Like that I hope and like to explain that to people that aren't in the rodeo world, like you're saying, the people in the stands, like, well, let's go into this real quick. People think the rule, or some people are confused that they think the flank, that rope on the back of the bull, goes around or is actually tied around his genitals to make it mad so it bucks. Well, if you grab any other males in the stand or anywhere else, and if you go tie a rope around their genitals and then ask them to perform at that level, they're going to stand really still until you take it off. And a bull would do exactly the same thing. All that flank does, it's a soft cotton rope, is it feels like if they throw their back feet, they'll kick it off. So it gives them a little more, they look flashier, but it's also really, and I believe this so much, these bulls get to where when that goes on, they know it's time to compete. This is like NBA finals. Now it's like telling the basketball team when they walk in, or Hoosiers, take the kids to the arena and let them go measure the basketball court and let them see that it's the same size as everywhere else they played. When these bulls load, come up the chutes, when the flank's there, especially the music's loud, they're turned into the uber athletes they are. And so that part, like when they're running you, sometimes you get run over. I would say, like, someone comes down the basketball court and puts on an amazing dunk. When they come around and you see that, when they're just pumped, these bulls are just like that. That if they run you over, it's because you're in their way. There's some that are mean, but there's some that will do anything in the world to not bump into you. And but this blend, and then to see how these animals, yeah, if you're gonna be a bullfighter in this level, I think if you don't respect them in that level, then you don't stay in the sport.
Yeah, but it seems though you have a different level, or at least I'm sure maybe just that you're able to articulate it differently. But like you create like this it's beyond respect. It's this camaraderie with these animals. I mean, you're talking about like, no, I want to have that connection. I want to put my hand, right on their forehead. I mean, talk about that because I think about this symbolically in life, right? Most people see the gray areas and dark areas and be like, I'm not going there. Yet you're going, no, no, I'm going to show you love, respect, compassion. Talk a little bit about that.
Like those words, you just said it right there. And it just all I think of is as you saying like the darks and grays, like you want to work on your shadow. Like we all got shadow. And the reason it's shadow is because maybe we don't know it's there, but we don't like to go there. And why not? Like all of a sudden you're in a space, you've made this big, I've made a commitment that that bull rider is going home as safe as he possibly can. And if I go home beat up, that's my job. And I know that those actions have consequence, but like, and I'm choosing those. And as every choice we make or an unchoice is also a choice, but going in to that state of like what it feels like to somehow it's fast, it feels fast, but it's also going really slow. Like that somehow my feet are paying attention to every lump, weird spot in the ground. I know where the rider is, so I don't step on him and trip. I know where my partner is across from me, so when I should move, when he's going to come in. And sometimes an hour or two after a rodeo, I'll be thinking about someone that was behind the chutes, up on the chutes, or the stock contractor who owns that bull, watching his excitement of how well his bull did, that somehow it's just like stuffing itself into me. Like those billion particles, I get to pick up an extra 2 million, I guess, in that fine moment that later I process. And I think I do, I've thought about it a lot. And the fact that like, I'm thinking now too, like that it spurs so many thoughts in me, Ben, that you kind of like sent me to like, I think about like how much time I spent in bed fighting bulls. I tell people, and I did it in my TEDx talk too as well, like I have fought thousands more bulls in my mind than I ever faced in the arena. I would lay there at night before I went to bed and just imagine the scenario, like enough to like visualize what would it smell like? Like, is it raining? Is it muddy in the arena? How's this bull gonna turn? And like trying things over and over again. Like I do this and like even so much as to where I let myself just get wrecked out in my imagination of like I hesitated and then I went and I get hit. And so I'm processing and building that my muscle memory in my mind to where if you hesitate in this career, you're late and you or someone else is going to get hit or hurt. And I think in those phases of then where all of a sudden I'm like charging towards a bull's head and a rider, then I'm 3 steps in when my brain finally says, oh, are we really doing this again? Like because my body sees it, my brain, instead of should we go now? Should we go now? It just goes. And then as I process in the way like, oh yeah, we're going. And now we've committed. Like the commitment was done so far outside of the arena that it now no longer, it's not a hesitation. It's not a questionable mark when we're in there. And so I think, yeah, I don't know. I just thought about them a lot. I still do. Like I love seeing bulls and I love communicating with them. That slight connection of what it is and what brings them to bring out the best in me. I think they offer it like they very gently or not gently as like they're the ones that put fear like this and said, you can leave it and just be fearful, or this is your opportunity to evolve. You can take this fear. And not even so much fear of getting hurt, but like fear of failure was the biggest nightmare. Like the last thing I want to do is let down a bull rider. I don't want people in the crowd to be like, that guy sucks. You know, he's not doing his job. Like fear of failure, I think, haunts us all. And somehow these bulls brought me to a place where you either address it or you as hang up your cleats and you leave, because then you can't, if you can't do that, is your heart in it?
By facing those fears, it allows you to be in a place that I think that we all like try to get to, right? You know, it's so interesting. We grow up and we can't wait to be adults, but when we're adults, we can't actually wait to get back to that childlike innocence, right? To clear out the clutter, clear out the responsibility so we can just have like these moments. And I know that everyone who's listening to this podcast is going to go, you know, there's a summer moment, there's a summer night, there was a time frame as a kid where it just felt like you wanted the evening to like hang and go as long as humanly possible, right? You have a moment where you want to recreate the next day, but you can never recreate it. And what I'm listening to you as you are fighting these bulls, which is so symbolic to almost everything in our life, by facing those fears and leaning in and spending the time in the craft of actually being. And you might be like, being what? No, that's the point. Like if you have to go to what, like just the being, that you're creating these, Dan Martell calls them in the pocket moments, but it's in that pocket for that one moment. But yet we can replay them again. I can go back to like in first grade, the 4th of July moment, right? I can go back to so many of these different moments, Christmas morning moment. It's, and that's sort of what your bull fighting, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, well, and your choice of words are beautiful. Thanks, Ben. Because the moments that we get these, one in the flow, and it's funny, ours is the gap, the pocket. It's that place. You don't get those by doing. You get those by being only. And I don't know who said it. I should look it up because it's significant to me. It's like we're not human doings. We're human beings. And to me, when I'm being, is when the gifts come. That's when flow comes, and that's the part that it's not a passing slide on a screen. Like it's carved in the stone in my mind. Like those places that we get to have. And I think and they're a gift. That it's a gift that when we earn them, like honestly and purely, that we get to keep them. Like you're saying, like those flashes back to childhood, to all these places along the way. And I think it's that part of it's because we go deeper. It's our choice or not. Yeah, it is choice. But putting ourselves in a place where deeper is an option, but it's also like I want to be this much more intentional. Like keeping the attention to my intention allows me that next step. And that next step is the one where your hand is on a bull's nose and like touching his horn, and all of a sudden he's rearing up, going to hook, like to hit you. And you're in this place, and as your faces, are level with each other, there's lightning that goes between these two beings. That is, I don't know, but that's what it is to me. That's what it was that feeling of like, and knowing that my next step is one big step towards his shoulder. And when he lands, I'm in that place and I'm where I'm supposed to be. The part of the rule we all follow, it's not what you did, it's what you do next. And when you put yourself so deep into it, your only option is to take the next step, whatever it is, and do it with just as much conviction, whether it's right or wrong, and however it's going to work itself out. But man, you, instead of that step of conviction, you take a step back of hesitation. The next thing hurts, like, and it's what we do in business or trying to work through conflict with a group where it feels like it's getting tight or something's going to happen. We go back to take the difference, go back to the sameness that we all have. And that's this connection with our animal or wherever we are, get it square, and then we can go again. But by just like, something might not be right. That's only leave things open and people become vulnerable. We become vulnerable around the bull.
Yeah. So Raymond, just so everyone who's listening, right, and watching, when you say like you were touching the bull, touching its nose, its horn, like we're talking like this is out in the middle of. Give us an idea. How big is the arena, right?
So rodeo arena, I mean, they're different sizes, but I mean, could be easily be a couple 100 feet long, 100 feet wide. I mean, they can be big and all sizes. And then there's even like sometimes smaller ones when it's just bulls, so that the bulls, they can buck, because ideally they want to come out, spin, buck, do fancy moves, and then leave. So sometimes the arena ends up being smaller, which metal is not your friend. Like, you don't want to be on the fence. Your job is out in the open. So yeah, you're pretty well off. The clown now with his barrel in there, he's one of your islands of safety. So you can use that barrel in the middle of the arena, kind of brings this little space in there, which 150-pound barrel, 180-pound clown inside of it, that bull will toss that thing like it's an empty pop can. So you can imagine when they hit you out there, they can throw you pretty far. And yeah, so you're exposed. And I get that's the other part of it, is that you're choosing to go farther away from safety a little bit, and you kind of get the deeper reward for it of getting to work with these animals. Like, but there's times when you're between the chute, which is steel, and the rider's right here, and there's a bull coming, and that's your job, is to be between that metal, that steel, and there. And that's a pretty dangerous place to be. But again, it's our commitment. So yeah, the open's better. If you get thrown around in the open, you get beat up, but the steel does not forgive at all.
Yeah, and just to give an idea, we hear 1,800 pounds, right? It's sort of like when someone says, like, oh, I got like 8% return, right? But when you actually quantify that over a period of time and you actually understand the difference between 6%, 8%, and it's not just a number, it's quantifiable. How much bigger, when we say 1,800 pound bull, like how tall in comparison to that bull, and like how long is this bull? Like give an idea, like.
So weight wise, like the best description is late 70s model Volkswagen Beetle, 1,800 pounds. So
Okay.
I tell people, like, so if you imagine that, I mean, lengthwise, not a whole lot different. Maybe not, definitely not as wide, but if you take that and then add horns, hooves, speed, agility, and then stuff the back and the front with like attitude and athletic ability, that gives you an idea of what it's like to get hit. Like, I mean, yeah, and trust me, you're not gonna. My body is not. I'm not gonna hurt them at all. I'm. They're not even to feel that. So I mean, yeah, it gives you an 8 foot long chute. They feel pretty close. There's some room for them to move back and forth, but yeah, I mean, it's a big. They're. I always say, like, no, if their nose is in your crotch, their horns are probably right about here across your chest. So, I mean, they've got a head face about the size of your torso.
The reason I ask, because like I think then people hear it, they go, "Oh, bull." And depending upon who's listening to us and where they came from and their background, might go, "Okay, cow. I think it might look like this." Um, but just to give a level of the potential seriousness of it, right? But I think going back to the symbology, like all the things that we have, the gray areas, the dark areas can feel like, hey, the cow's nose is in my crotch and the horns are here, right? And that, by the way, there's a steel chute behind me. And but so some might say, and they're listening to us, be like, well, that's easy for Raymond to say because he has a legit Volkswagen Beetle trying to drive him into the ground, right? Yeah, so it's easy for him to say to be present. So what would you tell those entrepreneurs or just anyone who's listening to this to be able to go, well, how do I have that connection with my bull? How do I get my hand on its forehead or its nose? And so how can I like actually transform from fear into love, compassion, empathy, and connection with this fear?
I think one example actually, this came up in a little retreat I was at with. There were 6 of us and mostly very entrepreneurially driven people. And one gentleman's had several companies, and so the guy, my friend Will Travis, was running it, and he asked him, like, so you have a conflict at work, something's not going right in the business, what happens? And he's like, well, I kind of like feel like it's not 30,000 foot, but I'm definitely going to get in the helicopter and kind of look down around, see what's happening. And so he got done and kind of talked about it, and they said, so Raymond, what happens in your world when when something arises? And I'm like, I get close. Like, I want to get as close as I can. And think about, like, something's happening internally. If you're not in it, like having conversation, like, I mean, holding an employee like by hand, just saying, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? What is this? And by doing that, even if it goes to bad, you just get pushed around, we call it, I get bumped a little by the bull. You stay back and kind of like you start trying to direct things when you're not really fully into it, you're going to have a wreck. And then it comes back to you let a Volkswagen Beetle get enough speed, it can do some damage. And whereas if you get in close, now you're changing its movement. Now it's kind of having to do the turns. And so I think that part for entrepreneur, like, the other part is like the reward of once you're in there, like those last two steps are pretty damn scary, and they change over time. You do things enough so they're not scary, but you better be nervous. And the other is if you're not nervous doing this, diving into it, maybe it's time to look at something else, because maybe that's not keeping, and to me, it's that is like when people just get into it, and yeah, it can level you, but look what it can do when you do it. Look what happens when you do it. And you have, employees that they see you in a different light. They see you for love, compassion, like that. One, you love what you're doing, but you love them just as much. And it's not about the dollar in those senses. It's this community you build. And another example, like, I could get in the car to drive my 8 hours home after 3 days at a rodeo. And if and I'm driving home and I'm fine, like, wow, that was a great weekend. I'm not busted up. I stop an hour or two out to stop and fuel up the rig or whatever. And if I know a bull rider got hit and it was my job to make that save and I didn't make that save, that's devastating to me. Like, heartbreaking, to where I don't want to, that was a crushing thing. And I tell people, like, and it was the looking back. So don't give yourself the opportunity to have to look back and be like, God, Ed was screaming that what was going wrong. And I didn't sit down with him. I didn't dive into it with him. And now I lost Ed, and, Ed's like, I'm done, and these other things. So I feel like that's the biggest one, is like, man, you don't get to go back and do them again. And and finding something that you love so much that, these guys raising these bulls, and the same, like, you don't fight bulls to get rich and famous. That's you figure that out right away, which is awesome, because you learn a lot about yourself. Of, you got to make this commitment because you're making this commitment to these people. Like, there's not a world championship bullfighter for cowboy protection. There's places you can get elected to, but it's different. You don't get the world title champion. And, but these people are raising these bulls, and at a cost of $20,000 to $500,000 a bull. Like, you want to talk about entrepreneurial investment. He gets in a fight with another bull and breaks his leg. Returns aren't real good, and like, so the care they're given, how well they're taken care of, the chiropractors that come and adjust these bulls if their back gets out, or, physical therapy if they do get an injury. It's whatever side, like, you got to be in. That's what I think is the thing for it is. And then once you're there, get really close to what's going on and slow the hell down. Slowing down makes I don't know, conflict, we always, and shadow, let's get through it and get out. Get through it and get out. Like we talked about it, we're done. What if you stand in it? What if you let it sink in, like fill your shoes with the muck, man? Like, I don't know. We all came from mud. Like, let it seep back in there a little and process that. Because when we slow down and we look at each other in the eyes, we have the conversation, we come back to being human beings.
I just had a breakthrough here, Raymond, in your analogy of the arena, right? Which is we're all in some sort of arena, right? Maybe it feels big. Sometimes it maybe feels really close, and but standing back is avoidance. Coming only within 8 feet, but you still feel like you're not willing to fully commit. That's being in control. But being in that pocket that you talked about, that gap, getting in close, that's actually being in charge.
You're influencing it, yes. And so then what the next part is this piece. Because now you are in charge. Does your heart and your mind, because they both have to have a little warrior and a little saint on both of them, you know? I can't remember how the normal order people say it, the heart of a saint and the mind of a warrior. But mine is, I truly believe you have to have the heart of a warrior, that's the commitment, and your mind is that of a saint. And so that's the part, is once you're there and your heart is in it and you're in charge, now what do you do with that being in charge? Do you take it to your advantage, or is it for the betterment of the whole situation to make sure this bull is my challenge, but I also want this bull to come back again? I want to make sure he's safe. I want to make sure my company, my rider, is safe. And that's, I think, now that you say that and you bring it up, like, that's where the real work starts. That's where you go inside. That's where the shadow, that's where the gray. I'm in it. What am I going to do with it? Who am I really?
Yeah. But before we answer that question, I want to go back to the beginning here, because you said, I got into this because in a lot of ways you were asking the question, well, who am I, and who am I really? And a little bit like, am I really worth it? Like, do I really have like what the grit to actually to call myself a human being, in essence, right? Can you talk a little bit about like what was the turning point in your road from Las Vegas to this? I mean, what drove you to that, to be asking that internal question where you're going, do I really have the grit? Like who the hell am I?
Yeah. Yeah. Feeling lost in who I was as a person, like living in a very urban environment, where I grew up in a rural Montana, where I've moved back to. And that part was hard for me. Working on the Nevada test site doing reclamation. My connection to the Mojave Desert is still, we were just down there a couple weeks ago to go rock climbing with my wife. And that place, the grounding. So I had this revelation there, and I knew and I know that particular piece of Mother Nature and environment more deeply, and I have a stronger understanding of plant, wildlife, whole soil community. I knew it then better than anywhere, and I still do, but I myself was completely lost in who I was. What was I doing? I mean, and also like 25 years old, pretty impressive contract. I was the only person that I worked with that didn't have a PhD in my entire department. But I would go out. I like to work in the field. Like, my connection was with the plants and animals. So I had that strong, but I was lost. Like, who I was, like, way too much money. I mean, I'm proud of who I came out, but like, drugs were pretty easy. Like, the road of addiction that I ended up dealing with farther down the road, like, that was there. That was putting its footprint in. And it was making me question who I was. I still loved people and my heart was out and I want to help people, but it's a big it's a big box you open, Ben. And um, I want to give it fair justice just because it's hard for me. I just wasn't making choices, but I knew consequences were coming. And also that this last trip to Las Vegas, we stay in the same place every time. And there's a homeless man that for the last 4 years sleeps in the same spot on that street every single day that I'm there. And every time I go, I spend a little time with him. I always bring him socks. So he has new socks, and buy him a couple meals or whatever we cook. I always take him down food. And now there's this part of me where I question, like, and I do it because I care, like, because this man means something to me. But there's a part when I sit with him, I'm not entirely sure how much longer my existence in Vegas could have continued where I wouldn't have been on a path that he is on now. So, yeah, it was a really dark time for me. And coming home and I think getting to be around my parents and just rebalancing my life, and then still doing reclamation work, but it was finding that connection with the animals again that I think what was that driver of me of who am I really? Like, am I just a nice guy on the front? I guess, maybe I was doing the 20-foot back, like, hey, and I would be happy to help people do things. But did I really have it? Like, when it wasn't comfortable, was I still going to do it? And I think that somehow spawned into me long before I understood what was actually happening. Those first couple bulls that I was around, like, there was something going on in there of letting me push myself.
Yeah, I mean, Raymond, you're looking to put into the world what you were looking for yourself, right? You were a land reclamationist, but really at the end of the day, you did that to avoid the reclamation that really needed to happen, which was the one of like yourself. Like when you think about this journey you just outlined, the person who's standing near the fence because that is what is perceived as safety without realizing the danger, right? That was you in that 25 being like, I'm going to avoid, I'm just going to either self-medicate or, whatever the thing that, and by the way, we all have these things, right? That we are looking to avoid. Yet the bull, like you said, either you get close to that bull or that bull's going to pick up speed and it's going to run you over. And unfortunately, in this story that you're sharing about the homeless man, is that sometimes you see the people who didn't get up.
Yeah, and that part of, like, sometimes we don't know how to get up. Sometimes we don't want to get up, and I find, some people get upset. They're like, "That's so machismo of, like, pull yourself up by your foot bootstraps." But that's not how I see it. Mine is, if you need help getting up, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with needing help. Sometimes you can't even ask for it, but when someone offers it, you try to get up. It's when you're not willing, even if someone helps you, you're not willing to get up. That's a different place. And I think seeing that in the people that get lost, but that when you can get up, or, I'm blessed with a family and my wife is amazing of support. Like, when you have that, how important that is. And that thus in return, maybe now that you say it, I tear up. Those bull riders, like, I didn't have to lift them, but my job was to just give them a second to get up. And that's all they need. That's what most of us need. And I think now, like, in our business world and doing the facilitation work that I do, that we don't have to pick. Most people don't need, we don't need to pick them up. Sometimes we just need to get in something's face. And if we have to take a little bit of a beating, But if it just lets them get up, then they get the beauty of getting up on their own, because that's what makes us stronger. Getting knocked down, but shit, we all get knocked down. But the getting up is what does it. And then you make the next choice of, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to get better. Or that's not for me, which is perfectly fine. There is no shame in any of that. Like, I always tell people when we're working on like stories, when people are going to do a live storytelling, a truthful storytelling, that two things. One, man, whatever you got in the shame closet, same as the shadow thing, speak it. Speak it to a group of people. One, now it's out. And two, it starts healing like this. It's like the tongue of a buffalo, I say, or a cow, and like that thing goes into a wound. I mean, it's like 10 grit sandpaper. Like, it's brutal, but it cleans it all the way. It doesn't just put a scab over it and let the infection stay inside. Like, you speak those things, you get up and people get to witness you. That's like cleaning the wound so it gets to be a scar, because then, one, it's a story, two, it's a memory, but it's a lesson. It's all those things instead of the discomfort, but I don't want to do the deep work. Then guess what? You just keep peeling a scab and you keep having an infection and it doesn't go away. And a lot of times that's because I think maybe it's a nurture thing, but like, people don't believe in themselves that they can do this. They can get up. And the bulls I just needed a teacher that was a little more aggressive, maybe a little more forward of my lessons. Like, I was a little slow on figuring that out. So I needed 1,800 pounds to move it around. So yeah, I do. I look back on that part of getting into it, still having a reclamation job and doing that work, and how much it meant to me, like helping Mother Nature get a boost. And again, Mother Nature, she fixes herself. And like, as soon as we're gone, she's going to thrive again. Once we're doing this kind of stuff, like, but that same thing, my job was this time scale. It's different of, if I work on soil, give it a tiny bit of work. Now I've jump started this thing 100 years to start this process of healing. Maybe it's not a whole lot different than getting between a bull. And on the geologic time, they're both like that and they're done, So
I think so often we are really quick to judge others because it's our effort to do reclamation, because it's so much easier to reclaim someone else's shit than your own.
Absolutely. Hands down, Well, and that's the beauty of shadow. You can see other people's shadows a lot easier than you can see your own.
That's a line right there. It's so true. Most people go, "Hey, do you see your shadow?" And you're like, "Oh, it's right there."
Yeah. And until you're willing to identify it, then you get to work with it. You know it's there, and then the next choice is, how do I want to work with it? Do I want to go this way? Do I want to go that way? And they're either these choices. I find that if my choice gives me a whole bunch of other choices, or if my choice gives me less choices, the one with the less choices is the path I probably want to be on. Every time I'm making a choice, it gets tighter and tighter to where I almost don't have a choice. But that's where freedom is. Freedom sits right at the end of that. And it's just like flow. That's where we hit freedom, is when I make a choice with a bull. The next choice is commit more, get deeper, go a little more. And each one of these, then there's just this point where it's bliss. But it doesn't stay. It's like, we don't get to rent it. You don't get to rent flow. You don't get to rent that space, because especially bulls, you find yourself in there, and ego's not bad. We have to have ego. Like, ego's in its place and it starts to move and shift. But all of a sudden, when you're like, oh, that was so sweet. Like, that was such a sweet save. Like, the next thing is you notice a horn coming up in between your legs and you're going up in the air and you're out of it. But then you can get back into it. I tell a story of one of the last events. It was a 3-day rodeo. I'd been elected or voted in by the bull riders, so it means a ton. Like, they're asking you to be there to protect them. And so there were 30 bulls for 30 riders each day. The third bull, of the first day. I made a gap that was amazing. Like, it was just, and it was I have a photo I got of it, a friend of mine, Craig, and like my hands on his head, like I'm sliding frontwards through, and it's just, I remember that moment so clear, like we talked about, and the point of like, oh, that was so sweet. And then the next second, I'm shooting straight up in the air, and I'm looking down like, I'm gonna totally land on my feet. I'm still good. And right as I was coming down, he came through, and I have a picture of me with my legs wrapped over his head, and I'm looking down his belly. And that was number 3. So I had 27 more bulls that day. I have 30 the next day and 30 the next day. So I've got maybe a minute, gather my chickens, which are scattered, as we call it when you get thumped pretty hard. You know, you get your brain, and like come back all the way to earlier in this talk of like, okay, I got to get back to my present. I got to take a breath. I can't change what just happened. There were good and bad. I don't know what's going to happen in the next one, but I'm going to do whatever it takes to be there. But right now, that's the point where you get to be, where we just get to be. With manure smeared on our hands, like your hat's crooked, you know, blood running down your leg or something, but you get to be there.
That's so beautiful. I love what you just said. Bliss, you can't rent it. As much as we love, like, you can't go buy it, and you can't shop your way to it. You can't earn your way in terms of in W-2 or in terms of business profit or in equity value increases. Bliss is actually getting in oftentimes when you get down in the nitty-gritty. And oftentimes life forces you into your hands and knees. It's interesting. You were talking about flow state, and I think I want to ask you a question about that, because I think sometimes people flow state, it's only when you're actually in the flow of like you had a sweet save, right? But I want to bring you back to, you just brought this imagery to me when you said, I remember the first time that a bull was trying to drive me into the ground, and I had a smile on my face. So is flow state only when you have the sweet thing happen? Or is flow state, can it be in terms of what maybe outside, someone looking in being like, that does not look great. That doesn't look pleasant. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I think it's real. Like, I think flow is like anything else. It's not one, we don't get it forever. And it's not just this. Like, when I first started, the latch would click, and they're going to, the gate would open, the bull would come out. It was like high speed, try to get through, progression 7 years in. So, by the way, I did this for 10 years. I don't know if I said that. So at 43, I finally retired. So, by my choice, and had a great amateur career. It was really exceptional for me. But as time went on, I would step into that arena when it was time for the bulls, be excited, like feel the space, like really take it in. And like, I would ground. I always tell people, like, and a lot of times when we do an event together with people, I really like to like ground, but we're not grounding to calm down. Listen, like, we're grounding to feel the earth, like charging us, taking that nervous energy. I'm still grounded. It's just not, I mean, it is in some sense, but ground, be ready. Like, I'm here, I'm going in, like everything's pumping. And as soon as that first crack of the latch, like pop open, I'd hear it. Everything would just go slow, like the bulls, everything. And then it really became a dance. So through the progression of 10 bulls to 50 bulls, there was a state of flow that was present. And it kind of ebbs and, it's catching good waves, less waves. But I don't think, like, you're not in flow just on the wave when it's perfect. You don't get that because and you don't get flow unless all the preparation you did outside, like laying in bed, imagining bulls, watching yourself fight bulls until it's not like, it's hard to watch yourself because, again, you're judging the shadow part. So you get in the arena and this space like happens, like things slow, like I become very aware and very present. And then there's times where it gets super intense, where it's just, everything is just so much because there's so much more happening. But in the calm times, still very much in a flow state. Yeah. And the same, like you get your world rocked, or you have a bull step on your foot and now you're just this pivot piece as he runs you over. Whack, it hurts, it pops you out a little, but you're still in that realm. I'm connecting, I'm with the earth, I'm with this animal, I'm with my partner who's backing me up. Like, we're all succinct. And even when it's a partner that you work with lots of different people, you don't work with the same person all the time, bullfighter wise. And so there's some that you have to step up. There's some, like, I got to fight with several of my mentors who are in the top 5 in the world bullfighters that I was lucky enough to get to go in the arena with. They let me come in. Well, our skill levels are different, but we still get to be in that space together and we work with it. And that's that part of flow where it's like the universe makes all the adjustments, kind of, but it's not just because you're there. It's because of all the work we did outside. And then when it comes, like, flows, it's amazing. Yeah. And that's my thing, is that I think it really does that. And understanding that there's beauty and grace in the I mean, the shit show is the best description. Like, when it's going all wrong, it's really real, but so is it when it's going perfectly. It's still really real, but there's something else in there, this, like, I don't know, it's like spiritual. It's like this pollen from, or what, some stardust is trickling down on you, and you just, like, you're in it with all of it. And to me, it's a very spiritual place. And you wouldn't think a rodeo arena, we got bulls, all these amazing athletes that are performing all these things, but pretty sacred space, pretty sanctimonious as well, and very much a ceremony. I think there's a piece in flow that comes from ceremony, of however that works in the person. Paddling out to a wave is just as beautiful as getting to ride it. And that part of talking to the bulls in the back pen, seeing who's there, like the ones want scratching on their neck, they'll be up on the fence, and when they're done bucking, if you're in their way, they're still going to run you over. They get in this, I think they find their place too. They know what's happening as they come in, and they're there to perform. And then they go back to their other job of being a bull, just traveling and getting to do their thing. So,
two things. I think that, number one, I'm having this imagery of, like, you remember the movie Gladiator, the cinematic moment where he steps into the arena and he, throws his sword down, gets some dirt, rubs it between his hands, and then, just smells it and just gets connected with the earth that he's at. But I think that the imagery of paddling out, getting into the arena, I think that those are versions of us writing checks to the universe. And I think when we actually paddle out and when we get in the arena and we cut that check, is that it's telling the universe that we are ready for the more that we're all looking for, the more that we are all searching for. But we go through all of these roundabout ways, right? You know what? I'll circle the fence, right? In fact, you know what? I'm not even getting in the arena. I'm actually buy a ticket to the stands. And yet then I'm going to watch other people go and actually cut these checks to the universe, right? By paddling out, by being in the arena. And maybe potentially complain or go, why is that? It's only happening to them. Like, oh, they must just be so lucky. And what I'm getting from your story today is we all have bulls. And are we doing the avoidance? Are we standing back by the fence? Are we sort of being like, oh, I think I'm going to do it. And then we get, we're trying to be in control, right? And that's a dangerous place. Or are we actually leaning in? And I just think that is just so beautiful. I think that's so empowering, that it tells me that agency is for everyone. It doesn't matter the guy in Las Vegas that you bring socks to, right? There's a level of agency that he has the capability of, right? To the person who maybe has everything, but maybe doesn't have happiness.
Yeah. What do I find the arena one of the greatest speeches? That piece of it is just I read everyone. I mean, I'm sure everyone's read it. Like Brene just put it out there and like it was, and just and it's beautiful. Like, and to think about that part, like, man, it's okay to be bloodied up. It's okay to be, and it's okay to wherever you choose to be, but remember where you are when you're making the comments. And the other your part. So my favorite word and whole experience in the world is petrichor. Um, Petrichor is the smell of soil after a long dry spell when it gets rained on. And so when you say like that touching, um, so yeah, that's petrichor. I spell it different, but petrichor compass is my business and my facilitating side. So it's that smelling earth and like feeling like who we are and exploring. You get to discover who we are, and the compass is the direction that we're going. But yeah, that knowing your yeah, and my poor wife who tells me whenever I'm like, "Wow, you smell really good," and she's like, "Oh God, I don't know how to take that. You think bulls smell good, and you like the smell of dirt, and then you tell me I smell good," and she's like, "I just don't know how to take it." So
Yeah. Yeah. That's he's like, yeah, you like the smell of dirt. This is good. This is good.
I think it's our connection. We find our connection and find what drives us.
Well, I'm going to put it back to what you started off with. There are things that we look for and things that look for us. And so is it the connections we're looking for or the connections that are looking for us?
And making sure we're open to both. I'm not sure. I think it's whichever way you're leaning, you better be watching the peripherals because the universe, the universe, the things we need to work on, the universe comes around a few times. And I think the same, the things that are looking for us, the things we're looking for, they give us a few chances. The first time is a tap on the shoulder, you know, a nudge, and then we farther down the Murphy's Law until it's just a full kick to the crotch of like, you need to work on this. But man, if we can catch them the first time of either, what am I looking for? Because once you get a little that far, what's looking for me is right there. And I think it's that, it's keeping that balance of, I like that. I like what you said a lot. And I'm not sure, but I think finding some sort of relative balance is really critical in that.
Well, what I'm coming away with today is be a bull dancer, which means step in, lean in, don't step out, don't lean away. Raymond, thank you so much for being here. If people want to know more about you, I mean, you mentioned a TEDx talk, but if people want to know more about you, where can they find more about you? Where can they read about you? Where can they listen to you? Where can they watch you?
Um, yeah, so petrichorcompass.com. It's PETRICORE compass.com. Just have a little website of a few of the things, and that's kind of getting worked on and built. So there will be more storytelling, different presentations, TEDx talk, kind of a bunch of links in there. And then mostly, like, if there's interest, reach out through that send me an email. Like, I love having just conversations. I like being able to speak to people, and to talk about anything, whether it's something you want to design, an event you want to facilitate, or my talks are pretty entertaining and kind of like this. Sometimes I keep them a little more structured, but they're pretty true. And there's something really fun about letting people get involved in either one it's on my LinkedIn is the same under that name of Raymond. So yeah, and any social media is the same. It's just Raymond Ansotegui. So yeah, and anyone has any interest, like I love sharing this story, but I love seeing how it gets to work in so many other realms outside. And I love hearing where people are like, oh, this had a nice little piece here. And that helps me remind myself that this is important work and that this story is important to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just for anyone who's listening, we'll put the links in the description and in the show notes. Raymond, it's been amazing to have you on. When you were referred over to me and being like, you want to have a conversation with this human being. You know what? It absolutely did not disappoint. Raymond, one of the things I like to do is give our guests the last word. And so when you let the ripple of our conversation and as it goes out into the world, what is that thing that you want our audience to take away?
I think it's those steps of make sure you breathe, commit to what you're going to do, get close. A lot of times it means getting closer than you want to. Slow down and really experience it. When it knocks you down, get up. And if you need help getting up, that's how it goes. But be from your heart and let your heart and your mind work together in whatever it is you're doing, because that's where the success comes in whatever form the dividends come in, whether it's money or spirituality or just heartfelt goodness. That's what it's about. Those are the dividends that we want to live with.
That's amazing. Raymond, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thanks for just sharing so generously today.
Thank you so much, Ben. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.